Hi everyone and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. In today's video, we are going to work on creating this really easy little toque. And I've called it the Manny toque because I am gifting this to my dad and his name is Manny. So I thought how appropriate. Super simple. We are using the crossed stitch. And I've done a tutorial on the cross stitch a while back and we combined it with some single crochet rows working into the back loops only, and it creates just it's a gathered top and it creates a little bit of that slouchy beanie effect. Now I've rolled the brim, so if you want to kind of create it a little shorter look you can, but it does slouch quite a bit over and I just wanted to do that to make it a little bit roomier for him. It does create a slightly lacy effect, as you can see. And his hair is thinning, so he likes to wear these hats around the house, so he doesn't want them to be super dense. There's a little breathability, but it still keeps his head warm. So that is it. It's going to be really quick. You can whip up a few of these over the course of a weekend, and they will make for great cold weather gifts. And there's my handsome young man here. So I hope you guys will like this tutorial. So let's talk about the materials you're going to need to gather in order to crochet your Manny toque. Okay guys, so let's talk about the materials we are going to be using for our hat. First and foremost, you want to make sure that you have a hat sizing chart handy. And you can find this on the Crochet Crafty website at crochetcrafty.com. I'll leave a link for it in the description box down below. These charts are always super useful. So this way you can make and adjust the sizing to any size you need. So I am making this for an adult size, I would say medium. So I am going to be looking at the hat height. So I'm going to come across here and I know that my hat height will have to be a minimum of 8.5 to 9 inches or 23 centimeters, okay? So when we're looking at height or depth, you're gonna look at this measurement here. So basically from around the ear to the top of the head. And so you can see that here. So when we talk about hat circumference, it's going around the head, which generally is here. So the hat is not going this way, right? A lot of times people measure the head and they go straight across. It should be on an angle, just going over the ear and around the forehead. So that's the circumference. And then the hat crown is this little area here. So that's what we're looking to create. And this is the crown from the side view. And then our hat height is the depth, right? And how it fits. So that's what I'm going to focus on, is the hat height, because of how we're going to create the panel for this hat. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do something a little bit, just a little bit different. Because I'm creating this hat in one panel, I actually want to take a measurement from around the forehead, edge of the forehead, and I'm going to count the number of chains I need to get to about here. So that's kind of the top end of the head there. And that's usually like if you're going to put a pom-pom or something like that, it's going to be right about there. So I need to create a chain that starts from here and goes all the way there. And then our panel will just continue to grow this way. Okay, and then we're gonna wrap it around the head. So I've gone a little bit more into detail already in the materials section, but I just wanted to let you guys know that that is how I'm going to form my hat. Okay, so hat sizing chart, super important. So you have that on hand. And of course, the yarn is very important. So we're going to use the Peyton's Canadiana yarn. I haven't used this in a long time. I love Peyton's Canadiana line. I just find that the feel of the yarn is so lovely. It's really nice and easy to work with. The only thing I have to say is if you have a looser gauge and you're making hats, you definitely want to go down a few hook sizes, because this does have a lot of stretch to it. So just be aware of that. They come in 100 gram skeins. I am using a 1 skein for my hat, which is for an adult. And it contains 187 meters or 205 yards. In case you're wondering, it is 100% acrylic. And they do recommend using a 5mm hook for this project. I'm actually going to go up a little hook size here. I'm going to be using a 5.5mm hook, which is also known as an I or a size 9. And that's just to give it a little bit of nice drape to it. I know it's a hat, but I just like this particular hat to sit a little bit more slouchy on the head. So that is the hook size I'm going to be using. Make sure as always that you are going to have a yarn needle to weave in your ends and a pair of scissors to snip off your yarn. And once you've got all your materials together, we're going to get started creating our hat. Okay, so we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook. Just like that. And so we're going to begin with our initial chain, and we are going to be using the crossed stitch. So we have to make sure that our chain is in multiples of 2 plus 1. Okay, so now remember at the beginning I said I am going to be creating a panel that is going to go from the edge of the forehead all the way to the crown. So for my adult size, I know I need to chain up 48. So that is what I'm going to do. Okay, so once I have my 48 chains, hopefully you can see that there. This color, I'm using this color. I know it's a little bit darker, but since I'm making this for my dad, he does like the color red and he likes this burgundy type color. So that is why I'm using this color. So hopefully you can see that. And in case you're wondering, it is simply called burgundy. Okay, so I did 48 chains plus I need to add one more. So I'm going to add one more there. And then I'm going to find the second chain from the hook. So let me just make sure you guys can see this here. So we never count the loop that's on the hook. And we count 1, 2 stitches in. There we go. So we have 1, 2 stitches in, and we single crochet into that stitch there. And so for row number 1, that's all we're going to do is into every single chain, we are going to place a single crochet stitch. Now you will notice that as you single crochet into your chain, that the length of your chain may very well shrink. Okay, so don't panic, that's normal. That's why we always say make sure that you do your initial chain nice and relaxed so it creates a little bit of room for things to give and move, but shouldn't be too much shrinkage, but you will notice a little bit. Okay, so that is row number 1. So at the end of row number 1, I will then have my 48 stitches. So go ahead and do that all the way to the end, and I will meet up with you for row number 2. Okay, so row number 1 is complete and I have 48 stitches. Okay, so now we're going to go on to row number 2. And this is where we're going to use our cross stitch. So you're going to begin by chaining 3, 1, 2, and 3. This will count as a double crochet stitch. So then you're going to turn your work. And so we're going to create the cross stitch. So what you're going to do is you are going to skip the next stitch. Now remember, this first stitch belongs to the chain 3. So that belongs to that first stitch there. So that is the base of your first double crochet. So the chain 3 counts as double crochet. So we're going to skip the next stitch, and into the following stitch, we're going to place a double crochet. Okay, just like that. So you're going to have a little bit of a gap here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the skipped stitch right there, and we are going to double crochet back there. So we're crossing back over. So you're going to yarn over, and you're just going to insert directly into that missed stitch, and then you're going to pull up a loop, and you can see it's crossing over the previous stitch, and then you're going to resolve like a regular double crochet. And I just stretched it up a little wee bit. So I'm going to pull through 2, and then I'm going to pull through 2. Okay, and that is our first crossed stitch. It looks kind of like a V, but really it's because it's come across this way here. Okay, and that is what we're going to repeat to the end of the row. So we are going to skip the next stitch into the following stitch. we will double crochet. And then we're just going to come back to the stitch that we skipped right there. And we're going to insert and double crochet as usual. And you can see that these loops are going to cross over the first double crochet. And that's why we call it a cross stitch. Some people call this the X stitch. And that's what it looks like. So it just gives it a little bit of a lacy effect. So you're going to keep repeating that all the way down to the end of the row until you have one stitch left. So this will take you all the way down and you're going to have one stitch left. And then I will meet up with you once you finish row number 2. Okay, so I have one stitch left, and into the very last stitch, that's that chain 1 that we used to turn, we're just going to insert and place a double crochet stitch. So remember, we chained 3 at the beginning. That counts as a double crochet, and then we have a double crochet at the end. So essentially your row is flanked by a double crochet on each side. So 1 and then 1. And this is what your work looks like. Isn't that pretty? So nice, that stitch. So this is row number 2, and essentially we are done our repeat. So we're just going to repeat row 1 and 2 just until we get the length of the panel that we need. Now, I'm going to take you into row number 3 because there is a little difference now in row number 1 because row number 1 was the establishing row. So you are going to chain 1, you're going to turn your work, and we're going to do a single crochet into each stitch, but we are going to work into the back loops only of this row, okay? So the very first stitch is right here, and we're going to work into that. We're just going to turn our work here so you can see the V's at the top. So instead of inserting into the full stitch, we're actually going to insert in through the top so we pick up the back loop only, okay? And then we're going to single crochet. And that is what you're going to do for every single stitch to the end of your row. And your stitch count should still be 48 stitches. So, and that is, by the way, if you're following along with me, doing a medium-sized adult hat, I have 48 stitches, and every row should continue having 48 stitches. And of course, if you're doing yours smaller, you will have a different stitch count. The main thing is to make sure that every row has the exact same stitch count. Okay, so I'm just doing a few here. So you can see what that does. Hopefully you can see that. It pushes the front loops forward and it creates a little bit of a nice texture. You'll see it more predominantly once you work more rows. And so that's it. So you're going to do one single crochet into the back loops only, into every single stitch to the end of your row. Okay, I'm just coming up to the end of row 3. Remember that chain 3 that we started row 2 with? Your last stitch, you want to make sure it goes right into the top of that third chain, because it's easy to miss that, and that is when your stitch count will go out of whack. So, and as always, if you're ever unsure, make sure you count. So there we go. Now you can really see that ridge coming through. Look at how cool that looks. Okay, so now our repeat is officially done. You're going to continue to repeat row 2, which is the cross stitch row, and row 3, which is the single crochet into the back loops only. So you're going to continue working that up until you create a long panel. It's going to be like a rectangle. And the idea is that you want that rectangle. So basically this is the length that we're forming here, and it should wrap around this way. And you're just going to keep going until this panel can wrap all the way around the head. And you want it to be a little bit snug. Again, these are going to stretch over time, so you don't want them to be loose to begin with. So you want it to be a little bit snug. So I'm going to go ahead and do up my panel, and I'll let you in on how many rows I ended up doing for mine. And basically, I'm just going to test it on myself because I'm an average medium adult size hat size. So that's a great thing that you can do, especially if you're doing this as a gift for someone. If you don't have them to measure, you can go by this, or just wrap this around your own head until the two sides meet. But anyway, I'm going to do my panel, and then I'll be back to show you what I've got. Okay, so I have finished my length that I'm happy with. And I have completed 46 rows. So I've got a nice length here, and I finished on the crossed stitch row, and you'll see why in a moment. Now, I wanted to make sure that it covers a circumference of 22 inches around my head because I'm an average adult size. Now, when you take the measurement here, you can see I'm really only getting about 18 inches. So I'm technically 4 inches short. However, I know from working with this yarn in the past, the Peyton's Canadiana, it stretches a lot over time. So I've wrapped this around my head. So when you fold it over, it creates like a little bit of a tube here. I've wrapped it around my head and it's pretty snug. Like I can still get it on comfortably. And I know 100% because I've made hats with this yarn before that over time it's going to stretch a lot. So I'm going to stop here at 18 inches and I'm fine with that. Now what we're going to do, as you can see, we are going to fold this over. So I haven't snipped off my yarn. I've ended up here. We're going to fold it over. And now we are going to stitch it shut so that you create a tube. Now, really pay attention to this because you want the side that has the loops pushed to the front as your front or your right side. So turn this over. I'm going to fold it this way. So see my working loop still here. And then we are going to slip stitch our way all the way across there. So that is why I stopped on the cross stitch row because remember, row 1 was a single crochet row down at the bottom. So we're going to slip stitch to that row and hopefully it's going to give us a nice seamless look. So I'm going to take you through that right now. Once I find my hook, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to insert my hook. And you guys have seen me do this in many projects before when we sew 2 panels together. So essentially that's what we're doing here. So I've got my hook in my loop here. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to work into the back loops only of this row. So I'm going to just go back, even though I just have a loop on my hook. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to insert my hook in the back loop of that stitch. But then I'm going to find the very first stitch here and I'm going to go in through the full stitch, which is the chain. And I'm going to go in through the full stitch, but it's actually the initial chain row. So we'll see if we can get a couple loops. That'll be great. I know this burgundy yarn isn't the greatest on camera. So there we go. That's the first stitch. I'm going to insert there. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it through all of these loops on my hook. So pull it through the front and pull it through the back. So you just pull it through everything and you just slip stitch to join your 2 sides. So I'm going to do that again. So I'm always going to find the back loop of the panel that's closest to me. And then I'm just going to go and find the corresponding stitch. I'm going to go in through the whole thing, pull through, and then pull through there. Okay, I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to find, so I just worked into that stitch. So I'm going to go into this stitch here, back loop only. Then I'm going to find the next stitch, which is right there. Insert. I'm going to pull through the 2 sides and the loop that's on my hook. Okay, so now you can see it's becoming attached. So just go nice and slow if you're new. For those of you that are experienced, you can probably whip through this. And you are going to do that all the way to the end. And when you get there, I will meet up with you. Now, some of you might say, well, I could just whip stitch it. You absolutely can do that. But because I'm going to continue stitching a bit more afterwards, I'm not snipping my yarn at all. And that's why I'm using the slip stitch method to close up this side here. So go ahead and do that. And then I will meet up with you once you get to the end and show you what we're going to do next. Okay, so, whoops, I have just finished stitching up my side. So now I have a tube. So you can see where did it go? There it is. So you can just see there's a seam very faintly up the back there. So it just looks like that. When you look up close, you can barely notice where it is because the ridge follows suit with the other ridges. Okay, so I've come up to the end here, and now what I want to do is I just want to stitch a very basic little trim. Now, this is exactly how much I have left of this skein, and so I plan on using up the whole thing. Now, here's the thing. Just be aware that you do need a bit of a long tail so that we can cinch up the top of the hat after. So just be aware of that. So I am going to start off. I'm going to chain one, and I'm just going to keep this, the brim of the hat really, really simple. Whoops. Just put that tail to the back there. I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to go right back into the area where I just came out of, and I'm going to single crochet. Now at this point, we're going to be working into the sides of stitches, right? Because you're in the sides of your rows. So every single crochet row just gets a single crochet. But every time you come across a chain 3 or a double crochet, usually you can place 2 stitches into the side of that. So just kind of gauge as you go along. So this was actually a double crochet row. So I'm going to go somewhere in there. Now you don't want to go into this space. You really want to try and find some loops to work into. It just makes your work look a lot more uniform. And I'm actually going to work over this tail if I can. So I'm just going to push that down and single crochet. Okay, so now I'm coming up to single crochet row. And I always want to try and pick up at least 2 loops so that I get some nice fortification there. And that's all I'm going to do. So now I'm at the top of the chain 3. So I'm going to insert there. So it's a single crochet into the side of each row or stitch. Now, my goal is to get at least 2 rounds. Now, realistically, I might only get 1 round because remember, I need to leave a tail so that we can cinch in this end, and then our toque will be complete. Now, if you want to actually add an accent color and add more rows, like if you plan on going into a second skein, then go for it. I'm just going to aim for 2 rounds because again, it's got quite a bit of height, so you can wear it either slouchy or you can actually fold it, and that already creates its own brim. So it's a really, really easy design. So that's all what we're going to do for this end here. Just a single crochet into the side of every row, and you're just going to keep going all the way around, and when you come back here, you will slip stitch to join right there. That's where we began. And you can either fasten off there or do another round or 2. And then once you're satisfied, I'll meet up with you and I'll take you through cinching in the top. Again, if you're super experienced, you're going to whip through this no problem. If you're super new, I'm just going to take you through it step by step. So let's finish off our brim and then we will cinch in the top of our hat. We are almost there. Okay, so I actually ended up getting 3 rounds out of that last little bit of yarn, and this is all I've got left, so I'm super excited. So we've got the tube, we've got a very little subtle brim. Remember, it's not meant to make a great impact, it's just meant to give a finishing edge there, as essentially they're probably going to flip that up just like that. In fact, I know my dad probably will wear it more like that than anything else because there's quite a bit of height here. So let's now close up the top. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it inside out. Okay, so this is the side that doesn't have those ridges on it. And so this side is the brim side and this side is the opening side. So just want to make sure that I've got my seam nicely folded on the side here. And now I'm going to take this last little bit here and I'm going to just thread my yarn needle here. Okay, just like that. And actually, I probably don't need this whole length, so I'm just going to cut this down in half here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at my seam, and I'm just going to insert my needle just anywhere along the top there. And I'm going to start off by knotting it here. And that's going to secure my yarn. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to take this end here. So see how the tube creates it kind of like so it's folded in half. So now what I want to do is I want to bring these two ends together. So I'm just going to pick up some loops and bring it through. I'm going to do kind of like a little whip stitch. And those of you that followed me for a while, you've seen me do this on Toque tutorials before. So there we go. So now the center is closed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the openings this way so that that closure is in the center. Then I'm going to bring these two together, and that way it'll find its way to the middle. So I'm going to pick this one up here, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to bring this one in the center. Now there's always many different ways of cinching in the top of a hat, and I've done a couple of different ones, but for this one I'm choosing to do the kind of what I call the crisscross method. You can also weave your yarn in and out and then cinch it, but there's a lot of material here, and so when there's a little bit of bulk, I like using this method. So see how now it's creating a little bit of like a petal-like effect? And so now what I'm going to do on each of these little petals, I'm going to take the center of that and bring it in and do the same thing and put that through. So I'm always trying to come back to the center here. And I'm going to, I always go in a couple of times, just like that. And then I always try and work opposites. So I just did this one. So now I'm going to go across the way here. I'm going to squeeze that down so you can see how it's starting to, so I'm going to join the center to the center of that. So you can see how it's starting to bunch in to close up the top of our hat here. Okay. And you're going to just keep doing that. So you see I've done this side. And now I would come over here and I would pinch that side in, and then I would come over here and pinch this side in. And then pretty much the top of your hat is pinched in. And then I would just whip stitch all along the openings here and just make sure it's nice and secure and really pull it tight. And then I would place a few knots. Then I'm going to weave in my ends and snip out what's left over. And then we'll be ready to turn our hat right side out and we'll pretty much be done. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish my closure here. And then I will show you the final reveal in just a minute. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys, I finished sewing up my top here, and you should be able to see, hopefully, that it just creates this little flower-like effect. So that's what it looks like on the inside. And now I'm just going to turn it right side out. Let's see. So it's nice and evenly cinched at the top. Perfecto. And there is our toque complete. Now you want to, of course, you can add a pom-pom on here, make it really fun and festive. It is a little bit on the longer side, so it's going to sit nice and slouchy, which is how I like it. And the wearer, of course, they can always fold up the brim if they like it to sit a little closer, more snug to the head. Now, since this is for my dad, I'm not going to put the pom-pom on because he doesn't like the pom-poms. But there you go. There is the toque. I hope you guys had fun doing this. And I hope you liked working with the crossed stitch. It's a really fun way to add a little bit of laciness, but still kind of retain its coziness, especially for a hat here. Now, if you have any questions, as always, make sure to leave them for me in the comment box down below. But of course, I know many of you do like to email me, so you can do that directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. Now, don't forget, come and visit me on the website, crochetcrafty.com. Lots of goodies there for you guys. There's sizing charts, there's free written patterns, There are paid written patterns, so there's a link to my Etsy shop for some of the more intricate patterns. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter because there are lots of behind the scenes, more in-depth still photos of all of my tutorials that I do throughout the month. So make sure that you sign up for that. And come say hi to me. I am on the socials. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at The Stitch Sessions. I spend more time on Instagram, but I do check in on Facebook as well for those that prefer to use the Facebook platform. So there you have it. I hope that you are keeping yourselves well and that you're continuing to have so much fun crocheting along with me and coming up with your own projects as well. And also, I hope that it's inspired you to come up with some of your own ideas and designs as well. So my friends, thank you so much for joining me today. Happy crocheting. Take good care of yourselves, and I will see you in next week's session. Bye-bye. Thank you.